Control is one of the biggest illusions we buy into. From a young age, we're taught that if we do things a certain way, if we say the right words, if we navigate relationships carefully enough, we can control how people treat us. But the truth is, no matter how perfectly we play the game, there will always be things outside of our control. People will say things we don't like. They'll act in ways that frustrate us. They'll misunderstand us, criticize us, and sometimes even deliberately try to get under our skin. The problem isn't that these things happen. The problem is that we believe they shouldn't happen. We think that if we just do everything right, the world will be kind to us in return. That expectation alone is the root of so much of our anger and frustration. Think about the last time you were truly bothered by someone. Maybe it was an offhand comment from a friend, a rude customer at work, or a passive-aggressive remark from a family member. Whatever it was, the moment their words or actions registered in your mind, you felt something shift inside you. Maybe your heart started beating faster. Maybe your jaw tensed. Or maybe you felt an immediate urge to respond, to correct them, to prove a point. That reaction, the one that happens almost instantly, is the part we do have control over. And that's where the real power lies. When someone says or does something that triggers us, we assume our emotional response is automatic, as if we had no say in it. But the reality is, between what happens to us and how we react, there is always a space. That space is where our power is. It's where we get to choose whether we internalize their words, whether we let them dictate our mood, whether we carry that frustration with us for the rest of the day. The reason most people struggle with anger isn't because they have to, it's because they never learn how to use that space. Most of us were raised on reactionary thinking. If someone insults you, you fight back. If someone is rude, you shut them down. If someone disrespects you, you prove your worth. But what if you didn't need to? What if, instead of reacting, you simply observed? What if, instead of engaging in the drama, you let it roll off you like water off a duck's back? That level of detachment isn't indifference, it's mastery. It's understanding that the way people treat you has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. The truth is, people are acting from their own insecurities, their own stress, their own unresolved issues. The rude cashier at the store, maybe they're going through something painful in their personal life. The co-worker who always tries to one-up you, maybe they feel inadequate and need validation. The family member who criticizes everything you do, maybe they're projecting their own fears onto you. When you start to see this, their words stop feeling so personal. Instead of getting angry, you recognize that their behavior is a reflection of them, not you. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It simply means you refuse to let their issues become your emotional burden. Imagine someone throws a hot coal at you. You can catch it and burn yourself, or you can let it drop to the ground without touching it. The person throwing it is the one getting burned, not you. The moment you stop engaging in other people's negativity, you break free from the cycle of anger and reaction. This shift in mindset is powerful, but it takes practice. We're wired to react, to defend, to take things personally. But if you start to create that space between what happens and how you respond, you'll begin to notice something incredible. Peace. Suddenly, the things that used to set you off don't hold the same weight. The opinions of others don't shake your confidence. The little annoyances of life no longer have the power to ruin your day. And that's not because the world changed, it's because you did. Every interaction we have is filtered through the lens of our own experiences, beliefs, and emotions. The way we perceive situations is entirely based on how we interpret them. Two people can go through the exact same event and walk away with completely different reactions. One person might feel offended while the other brushes it off without a second thought. This difference isn't about what happened, it's about how they chose to frame it in their minds. Reframing negative interactions is one of the most powerful skills you can develop because it puts you back in control of your emotions. When someone says something rude, most people assume they only have one option: react. They either get angry, feel hurt, or carry resentment. But what if you could change the way you see that situation entirely? What if, instead of immediately taking offense, you saw it as a reflection of the other person's state of mind rather than an attack on you? Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off aggressively. Your instinct might be to honk, yell, or feel a rush of frustration. But if you reframe the situation, you might consider that maybe they're rushing to the hospital, maybe they just got terrible news, or maybe they're simply lost in their own world and didn't even realize what they did. The moment you shift from "they disrespected me" to "maybe they're dealing with something I don't know about," your anger loses its grip. You stop seeing it as personal and start understanding that people's actions are almost always about them and not you. This applies to every kind of negative interaction. If a coworker constantly undermines you in meetings, your immediate reaction might be frustration or self-doubt. You might start questioning your abilities or feeling disrespected. But if you reframe the situation, you might realize that their behavior stems from their own insecurities. Maybe they feel threatened by you. Maybe they're seeking validation. Maybe they're simply used to operating in a competitive environment and don't know any other way to interact. Once you view it from this perspective, you stop internalizing their actions. Instead of feeling powerless, you feel in control because you understand that their behavior has nothing to do with your worth. Another example is dealing with criticism. When someone criticizes you, the natural response is to get defensive or upset. But what if you reframed criticism as either useful feedback or meaningless noise? If the critique is constructive, you can take it as an opportunity to grow. If it's baseless or coming from someone who doesn't understand your journey, you can dismiss it without letting it affect your self-esteem. By shifting your perspective, you remove the emotional charge from the situation. Even in personal relationships, reframing is essential. If a friend suddenly becomes distant or short with you, you might initially feel hurt or assume they don't care about you anymore. But if you reframe it, you might recognize that they could be going through something difficult. Instead of feeling rejected, you approach the situation with empathy and understanding. You realize that their behavior isn't necessarily a reflection of how they feel about you. It's a reflection of what they're dealing with internally. This shift in thinking isn't about ignoring reality or making excuses for people's bad behavior. It's about recognizing that you always have a choice in how you interpret situations. When you train your mind to reframe negativity, you become untouchable. No one can control your emotions except you. You stop reacting out of habit and start responding with intention. Instead of being triggered by every little inconvenience or insult, you see challenges as opportunities to practice emotional resilience. The more you practice reframing, the more natural it becomes. You start seeing patterns in human behavior, and suddenly things that used to upset you lose their power. You recognize that most negativity is a projection of someone else's inner world rather than a direct attack on you. And when you truly understand this, you move through life with a level of peace and confidence that few people ever achieve. The way we experience life is shaped more by our internal dialogue than by external events. Every moment of every day, our minds are narrating our experiences, assigning meaning to what happens to us, and ultimately determining how we feel about it. Two people can face the exact same situation. One shrugs it off, while the other spirals into frustration, anxiety, or anger. The difference isn't in what happened. It's in the story they tell themselves about it. Learning to control your internal narrative is the key to emotional freedom because it allows you to shape your reactions instead of letting them be dictated by external forces. Most people operate on autopilot when it comes to their thoughts. A comment from someone, a look, a situation. Without even realizing it, their mind instantly interprets it in a way that triggers a negative emotional response. If someone doesn't return their call, they think they must be ignoring me. If their boss gives them critical feedback, they think I'm not good enough. If a stranger gives them a weird look, they think they're judging me. These interpretations happen so fast that they feel automatic, but in reality, they are choices. Choices we've conditioned ourselves to make over time. The problem is that most people never question these interpretations. They take their thoughts at face value, believing them as absolute truth rather than recognizing them as just one possible perspective. One of the most powerful things you can do is develop the ability to pause and analyze the story your mind is telling you before you accept it as reality. When someone says something that upsets you, instead of instantly reacting, ask yourself, what am I telling myself about this? Is this the only way to see it? Is there a more empowering way to interpret this situation? This simple practice creates space between stimulus and response, allowing you to shift your perspective and regain control over your emotions. Imagine you're walking down the street and someone bumps into you without apologizing. If your internal narrative is, people are so rude these days, you'll likely feel annoyed for the next several minutes. If your narrative is, they probably didn't even notice, you'll stay calm and move on with your day. The event is the same, but your experience of it is completely different because of the meaning you assign to it. The ability to shift your interpretation in real time is what separates people who are easily bothered from those who remain unshaken in any situation. This skill becomes even more powerful when applied to personal relationships. If a friend cancels plans at the last minute, you could immediately assume they don't care about me. That thought would likely lead to feelings of hurt and resentment. But if you paused and reframed the situation with, maybe they're overwhelmed or exhausted, you'd experience a completely different emotional response, one rooted in understanding rather than frustration. The same principle applies to disagreements. If someone criticizes you, your automatic thought might be, they don't respect me. But if you shift your narrative to, they're expressing their opinion based on their own perspective, you remove the emotional sting from their words. The most dangerous thing about a negative internal narrative is that it doesn't just affect how you feel in the moment, it shapes your entire self-image over time. If your mind is constantly reinforcing thoughts like, people don't like me, I'm not good enough, or I always get treated unfairly, those beliefs become ingrained in your identity. Your brain starts filtering reality in a way that confirms these thoughts, making them feel even more true. This creates a self-fulfilling cycle where your own mindset becomes the biggest source of your emotional suffering. Breaking this cycle starts with becoming aware of your thought patterns. Pay attention to how you interpret situations and the automatic beliefs that arise. Are they helping you or hurting you? Are they based on reality or are they assumptions? Once you recognize a negative pattern, challenge it. Ask yourself, is there another way to see this? What's a more empowering way to frame this situation? At first, this process takes effort, but over time it becomes second nature. Your brain rewires itself to default to healthier, more constructive narratives. Mastering your internal dialogue doesn't mean ignoring reality or forcing yourself to be blindly positive. It means consciously choosing interpretations that empower you instead of disempowering you. It means refusing to let negative assumptions dictate your emotions. It means realizing that no matter what happens, you always have control over the most important thing, your own mind. In every interaction, there is a crucial moment, an invisible space between what happens to you and how you respond. Most people don't recognize this space because they react so quickly that it feels automatic. Someone insults them and they fire back. Someone cuts them off in traffic and they immediately get angry. A frustrating email comes in and they type out a heated response without thinking. This instant reaction feels natural, but it's actually the reason why so many people feel controlled by their emotions rather than the other way around. The ability to pause before reacting is one of the most powerful tools for emotional control, yet most people never develop it. The reason reactions feel automatic is because of conditioning. From an early age, people learn to associate certain situations with certain emotions. If they grew up in a household where arguments were loud and explosive, they may instinctively escalate conflicts in their adult life. If they were taught to always be on the defensive, they might respond aggressively even when no real threat exists. If they internalize the belief that being ignored means being unworthy, they might feel deep resentment anytime someone doesn't respond to them quickly. These reactions feel like they are happening to them, but in reality, they are just deeply ingrained habits of the mind. The good news is that habits can be changed. The first step is simply recognizing the impulse to react. Most people aren't even aware of it because they've never trained themselves to notice. The goal is not to suppress emotions, but to observe them. When something triggers anger, frustration, or annoyance, instead of immediately reacting, take a brief pause and mentally step outside the situation. This pause can be as short as a single breath. The moment you stop yourself from reacting on impulse, you create an opening where a different choice becomes possible. A simple but effective method is to ask yourself a question before responding. It could be something as simple as, is this worth my energy? Or what's the best way to handle this? Or will this matter in a week? These questions force the brain to shift from an emotional reaction to a more logical and intentional response. The difference between reacting and responding is that reacting is impulsive and often regrettable, while responding is deliberate and controlled. This practice is especially powerful in conversation. When someone says something that feels offensive or irritating, the instinct might be to defend yourself or snap back. But if you pause for even 2 seconds before responding, you give yourself the chance to choose a response that serves you rather than one that escalates the situation. Many conflicts that spiral out of control only happen because neither person was willing to pause and take a step back. Pausing is also an incredible tool for avoiding unnecessary stress. Many people experience stress because they react emotionally to situations before fully understanding them. An email with a vague tone might send them into panic, assuming the worst. A delayed response from a friend might lead them to believe they are being ignored. A co-worker's short reply might be misinterpreted as rudeness. But when they pause before reacting, they give themselves the opportunity to consider alternative explanations. Maybe the email wasn't meant to be critical. Maybe their friend is just busy. Maybe the coworker's having a tough day. When they delay their emotional response, they allow reality to catch up with their initial assumptions, often realizing that there was no reason to be upset in the first place. The ability to pause before reacting also gives a person control over how they are perceived. In both personal and professional settings, people who are quick to react emotionally are often seen as less composed, less trustworthy, or less in control. On the other hand, those who remain calm under pressure command more respect. Their words carry more weight because they don't waste energy on unnecessary emotional outbursts. They respond with clarity and confidence, which makes others take them more seriously. Developing this skill takes time because it requires rewiring deeply ingrained habits. The first few times, the pause might feel unnatural or forced, but over time it becomes second nature. The more a person practices this, the more they realize that most things simply aren't worth an immediate emotional reaction. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every rude person deserves attention. Not every problem requires an emotional investment. The more a person masters the ability to pause, the more they start to feel truly in control of their emotions instead of being controlled by them.